Well, what do you know? Another UCF loss by none other than UCF beating themselves. We've gotten so used to it, and it happened again yesterday. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Charge On. As always, I am your host, Sean Green. Before we get started, as always, a quick from our sponsor, BetOnline. The last of the major pro sports leagues is off and rolling, and college basketball is ready to go as well. BetOnline remains your top spot for all your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, and NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions. All the hoops betting action along with every sport available at your fingertips with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and remember to use our promo code BELIEVE for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. You know, we had a post-game live show on the channel. Hi to all of those who came on. If you just want to hear our thoughts directly after, go kind of rewatch that. But this was the epitome of UCF's losses or season in a nutshell. You know, you can blame it. I'm giving my opening thoughts before I toss it to Mr. Rob Husby. You can blame it on special teams. You could blame it on Colton Boomer. You could blame it on the defense and the lack of running game. You could blame it on the coaching, mismanagement of clock, time of possession, all that stuff. You could blame it on John Rice Plumlee. You can blame it on the skill players not coming up in big moments. You can blame it on a lot of different factors, right? At the end of the day, it comes down to one thing. UCF does not play good complementary football in certain games. You go from last week where you just completely blow out, at that time, the number 15 team in the country, have really no bad things happen to you in an entire game. And then you go on a road in a tough environment, an environment that we all said we didn't think UCF would be able to win early in the year. As the season went on, and especially the last 2 weeks, you're like, okay, you know, I feel pretty confident about UCF being able to go in there and get a win. Not easy by any means, but go get a win. And UCF had many opportunities to win this game. The main reason they didn't win this game is they do not play good complementary football in their losses. Could UCF won this game? Could they have pulled it out? Absolutely. They have many opportunities. They missed a field goal. That was big. They missed an extra point. That was big. They didn't get an opportunity to have a field goal at the one point because of poor clock mismanagement at the end of a half. Bad complementary football. And we're going to get all of it right now. I basically summed up the game in a nutshell. So if you don't want to watch anymore, that's fine. But I hope you do because we've got a lot to talk about. Rob Husby, you got to watch this game. Again.
Unfortunately.
It was one of those games we've grown so accustomed to. And we talk about the Gus wheel, but it's like, you know, it comes true most of the time. You have a huge win, and then the next week you're on your high, and you're like, okay, let's get to 6 wins. You got a bowl game on the line here, 7-5 potentially if you win out. That looks really good in your first season in the Big 12. Against a Texas Tech team that, listen, has had quarterback injury problems. Bayron Morton has really had, you know, injury problems all year with his shoulder. Listen, all you got to do is come out and stop Taj Brooks. You watch this game. This looks like UCF that we know and know very well. Was last week an anomaly? And give your thoughts on this game that we've grown accustomed to watching from the UCF Knights.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to say it's more of the same, but it is. I mean, this has been the theme all season. Listen, UCF, especially with regards to a lot of these Big 12 opponents, Oklahoma, you see it here now with Texas Tech and a lot of these other games. UCF has been within, you know, a 1-score game, but they just do something to themselves where, and again, there is a difference in talent, obviously, clearly, but in the AAC, they would have found games to win. You know, they would have found ways to win these types of games, these 1-score games. The Big 12 so far, they found ways to lose. So it's more of the same from UCF. Last week, you don't want to say it's an anomaly, but it kind of is. It was the most complete game they've played all season long against a Big 12 opponent, especially. And now they're coming off of that, and it's more of the same. You hit on all those check marks. What a classic UCF loss under Gus Malzahn, it seems like, right? Check it all off. Missed field goal kick, missed extra point, time mismanagement. You know, it comes poor quarterback play. It comes down all to it. So it's just more of the same from UCF. And this is why they're in the spot they're in now, is because it's just been inconsistency with this team. And, again, you can hit on all those points. The run defense not shutting down Texas Tech. I mean, you have Brooks go off for almost 200 yards of rushing. It's unacceptable. And, this is why you lose these close games. This is a game that should have been tied. You miss the extra point, and now you're losing 24-23 in a pretty uneventful finish to this game. So yeah, just more of the same. And it's disappointing, but really kind of puts a nice little ribbon on how UCF has played this season.
And I want to make it very clear. Okay, because I know a lot of fans are going off on Colton Boomer missing the extra point, and I get it. UCF was going to lose that game, even if Colton Boomer made the extra point. Did you watch the same drive that I was watching? Texas Tech was moving the ball at will, couldn't stop the run. They were going to score a field goal regardless. I mean, their field goal kicker hit a 50-yarder, in the same game. So I am not blaming it on the missed extra point. They had many opportunities in the game to put up points. And we're going to go through them because, Rob, I said on the live stream, I said, I have I have two offensive losers and I have one clear-cut defensive loser. Okay. My two clear-cut offensive losers are Tylen Grable. Don't really need to go into it. Awful offensive line play. Basically had all the flags for the offensive line in the entire game. I think like 3 straight where you're just scratching your head like, what are you doing? He was awful today and no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Kobe Hudson was my number 2. I had a guy, in the live chat was like, Kobe Hudson made 2 incredible catches. That was ridiculous that they called him incomplete. The one was not a touchdown. He had his heel on the back. The other one where they called an incomplete pass, that was a catch. That was a catch. I don't care. He had 8 targets, Rob. 8 targets. Most of the balls he had in his grasp, and he just dropped them. I think Kobe Hudson was not good today. Dropped everything that came his way. Defensively, Damari Henderson. Damari Henderson had one of the best games, probably the best game, no question about it, as a night last week. Gus Malzahn says one of the best safeties in the Big 12. If you're one of the best safeties in the Big 12, you can't get beat as many times as you got beat down the field in the game today. So, again, offensive, defensively, that's that. Special teams, awful. I mean, I think we might be, Rob, one of the worst teams when it comes to on kickoffs. I mean, I think every team gets at least 40 yards on kickoff returns against us because we're that bad on special teams. So, Rob, when I say complimentary football, we know what that means. Complimentary football is everybody putting in their weight to win a football game, right? If the offense goes down and scores a touchdown and the defense goes and stops the other team from scoring, and then the special teams does what they're supposed to, that's good complimentary football. You're all helping each other. When you have Tylen Grable making mistakes on the offensive line, backing up plays, right? When you have receivers dropping passes, when you're not kind of creating running lanes for RJ Harvey to move. Then on top of that, on the defensive side, when you can't stop a running back, right, which you haven't been able to do all year. And then on top of that, you have the special teams not being able to tackle in the open field when it comes to kickoffs, when you don't make, your extra points and field goals that are crucial points. That's where the complimentary football becomes the UCF Knights, because they find ways to lose the game. What is it about complimentary football that has really just plagued the Knights all year in these critical moments and by critical players down the stretch?
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about that, I don't know if it's a lack of depth. It certainly, I don't think it's a lack of talent, because there is a clear talent on this team. It might be just a lack of depth. I don't know. It seems like down the stretch in these games, like you said, it's like when it rains, it pours. UCF's defense will, get a big stop. They'll force the other team into a field goal, or they'll push them out of field goal range. They'll force them into a couple 3-and-outs, but then they get on offense and it's a turnover, or it's dropped catches, or they'll get on, they'll score on offense and then they'll get special teams and then something happens. You miss a field goal, you miss an extra point. It just seems like something happens when they just can't complete a complete game. And I think that's why we were so impressed with what they did against Oklahoma State. Not because it was a complete blowout, Obviously, that's part of the reason, but because it was a complete game, the defense was able to shut down the run game. They were able to shut down the passing game, let up 3 points all game. On top of that, offense goes and scores 45 points. Special teams can't really complain about them. Offensive line looked great. So you come off of that, and then you go into this game, and it's bad on special teams. It's an offensive line that we've seen all season long take penalties, not create holes for the run game, and allow a lot of quarterback pressure. And then it's a defense that is soft up front, concedes a ton of running yardage. And really, Texas Tech, for a good portion of the game, was able to pass all over UCF. So, I mean, they were moving the ball left and right. And UCF was able to, for a little while, bend not break. And, finally they started allowing those points. So I don't know. I don't know if it's a lack of depth. I don't know if it's just it's the defensive coaching. And that's where, they have to look at getting a new defensive coordinator and replace Addison Williams. I don't know. But it's clear this team it's very rare for this team to play a complete game. And last week was an anomaly where you're seeing them play a complete game where you can't really point out any criticisms for the entire game. And this had everything. This checked all the boxes for a pitiful loss.
Let's talk about the defense a little bit, because like clockwork, whenever UCF loses a game, I know what I'm going to see out of fans. I'm going to see John Rice Plumlee sucks. That's always going to be the first thing. I'm going to see fire Addison Williams, and I'm going to see something with Gus, right? It is clockwork this season. In all games, even wins, I see it. Let's talk about Addison Williams, okay? Tackling was poor. There's no question. Couldn't tackle to save your life. Now, you're playing the number one running back in the country and missed tackles. Taj Brooks has been known in the Big 12 to break tackles, right? So you can blame the defense because there was times where you feel like you had him and he just breaks out and gains a couple of yards. So that's frustrating. Now, you hold Texas Tech to 24 points. In my pregame prediction, I said I think you hold them to 24. They're a talented offense, but they're not, too good. But Rob, if you go down Texas Tech's games, if I even have it up, I might. If you go look at their schedule and you look at what they've scored in all of their games, I mean, they put up 35 or 33 on Wyoming. They put up 30 against Oregon, 41 against Charleston State. They only put up 13 against West Virginia. And I'll bring my point up there in a second. Houston, they had 49. Baylor, they had 39. Kansas State, they had 21. BYU, they had 14. But again, their quarterback didn't play the entire game in both of those games there. TCU, they put up 35. Kansas, they put up 16. And then UCF, they put up 24. So for a defensive effort, Rob, you could blame it on Addison Williams and oh my gosh, but let me go and tell you exactly the 3 plays, the 3 drives that UCF lost this game that you can blame on Addison Williams, but the defense did what they were supposed to do. All right. Come out at halftime. They get a stop. They force a punt out of halftime to begin the third quarter. 3 straight stops, 3 and out. Or, whatever it was, probably not 3 and out, but they get a stop, right? Texas Tech has to punt the ball away. What do? We punt back. We don't score. We punt it right back. All right. What does UCF defense do on the next possession? They get an interception. Nikai Martinez picks off Morton and brings to our 50, right? Well, what happens with us? Okay, well, we had a field goal attempt and we missed. We missed the field goal attempt, right? Hit it off the crossbar. Okay. Now we have to go back on defense. Okay, so what does the defense do? They force a punt. They force another Texas Tech punt. And what do? Interception. So we can blame the defense all we want. We can say, what the heck, Addison Williams needs to be fired. Complimentary football, Rob. I might title this episode Complimentary Football. UCF's defense had 3 straight drives where they stopped Texas Tech's offense and got you the ball back in the second half. And what did you do with it? Field goal miss, punt, interception. That's the game. You could blame it. You can go down the list and blame Addison Williams for the season, That's where the game came down to. You had 3 possessions to put up points, and you put up 0. You put up zip, just like Texas Tech. And you relied on your fourth quarter to save you. That's a recipe for disaster. So kind of talk about it a little bit. Again, I'm not saying Addison Williams perfect. I am not, I think Addison Williams, definitely there needs to be accountability in certain moments. But again, you are playing a running back that has been notorious for breaking tackles. And on top of that, the defense came to play in certain moments to try and give you a chance to win. And you didn't really help the defense out on the offensive side of the football.
No, yeah, I mean, I agree. I think, again, as much as the whole team got, compliments all the way around last week, you look at this week and they all get shame. They all get tisk on that. I don't think there was one facet of the game where you look at and you're like, oh, they all had a great game. Like Javon Baker had a good game, But again, you can blame a lot. You can blame the offensive line for, again, taking that many penalties. That kills drives. I mean, that you want to see how you blow games. Yeah, taking penalties left and right. And some of UCF's biggest losses this season have been when they've taken an abundance of penalties. It was a similar issue last year too with the offensive line. And then on top of that, again, special teams, it's not just the defense. It's not just Addison Williams. Again, they get a portion of the blame, but no, I mean, this is something don't want to reveal, how the sausage is made around here, but we were in our group chat, our friends group chat, talking about the game. What happened right before halftime? What did you say? You said, that's the game right there after that clock mismanagement, and they go into halftime with no points, no extra points. Didn't kick a field goal, didn't get a touchdown. You said right there, lost the game. And again, at the time, it sounds dramatic, but that costs you a game right there. That's 3 points that gives you a win. That's 3 points that's absolutely critical. So again, you can blame coaching there too with clock mismanagement. I mean, the blame goes around, and it's not on one unit. It's not on one team. This team does not play like a complete team. They're discombobulated week in and week out, and this is why they're struggling, is because they can't complete and finish out these games because they take something always happens. Something that they force usually ends up happening to them, where it's like, oh, if this point just went that way, if this just went that way, you don't want to have to look at that week in and week out where you're like, oh, if we had just done that, why didn't you do it during the game? Why didn't you go out and get those extra points when you had them? Why didn't you go and put together better drives that got held back because of penalties and because of lack of catching and lack of creating holes for your run game? It's a lot of things, and I think this whole team gets blamed. And this is, again, it's been the theme of the season. This is just not a complete team that plays as a complete unit. More often than not, they do not play a complete game. They just kind of just do what they do, and guys will have good games, and that's really it. They don't play in sync together a lot of the time.
Yeah, and I think, listen, we'll get into the offense, but you're right. Like, they have the most complete game they could possibly have last week, right? And then this week, it's the complete opposite, where you just make too many mistakes to have a chance to win the game. I mean, good on them. At the end of the day, they could have been tied. If you kick the extra point, you're tied with 5 minutes left. But it shouldn't have been that way. I mean, you had ample opportunities to give yourself a cushion. Hell, you were up 14-0. Like, you had ample opportunities to continuously put up points. Credit Texas Tech defense, but again, you hurt yourself. We'll talk about the offense, right? John Rice Plumlee, again, like clockwork, like I said, John Rice is not a quarterback. He was awful, which, again, if you look at the stats and you don't watch the game, he was 16 of 32 for touchdown, interception. Let me see. I have the stats up. Touchdown, interception, and 13 carries for 84 yards. Did he make some mistakes? Absolutely. I mean, there was a couple mistakes that he made. I don't blame the interception on him, which I don't know if I'm naive, but he got hit. He got hit hard. There's an argument to be made. Somebody let it be known to me that they called 8 straight passing plays, and that was the 8th passing call, was that interception or something. So, I mean, yeah, they could have ran a couple more times there, kept the defense honest, but I don't blame the interception solely on him. I'll also say we didn't do him any favors. I don't want to know how many times, again, a Kobe Hudson drop, a certain play call that, broke down and John Rice ran for his life, which he had a lot to do with some of the successes of UCF. The last couple of weeks, 3rd and 15s where John Rice gets a first down. Hell, there was one time we were on a 1st and 24, and at least we got to like 4th and 7. So again, I hate, this is my problem. You can't praise a quarterback when he does well. You listen, when a quarterback doesn't do well, you have every right to say he did not play good today. But John Rice is not the reason we're losing these football games. John Rice didn't call the shovel pass to RJ Harvey at the end of the half. John Rice didn't call that. Now, I said on the live stream, I do understand what the coaches were going for, Rob. Their thought process, right or wrong, was we don't have any timeouts. They know that. They're going to be playing the pass hard and heavy. So there's going to be a wide open hole. If you shovel it to RJ, it should be wide open. It wasn't. But that's not on John Rice. You're like, what, are you supposed to say John Rice is supposed to know that? No, like he was running the play. RJ was only 2 yards away from it. So you could blame it on John Rice. That's on coaching. That's on coaching mismanagement, calling a timeout when you got a first down to stop the clock, even though the clock stops. Coaching mismanagement. I don't think John Rice had a bad game. Could he have done some stuff better? Sure. But I think the night and day difference from last year to this year has shown its head this past, I don't know how many games. Every game he's played in, you can watch and say, John Rice has made significant improvements at quarterback. And he was not the reason we lost this game today. Not in the slightest. The reason we lost this game on the offense side of the ball is too many mistakes. And when UCF makes mistakes on the offensive side of the ball, like flags on the offensive line, like, again, an interception, missing field goals, whenever that happens, Rob, we both know UCF loses probably 9 out of every 10 games because, again, complimentary football.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, very well said. Again, you look at something like it was the Boise State game where, Javon Baker had 2 drops. One of the drops pops up, goes into the defender's hands for an interception. I mean, it's similar to that. Obviously, UCF came out on the positive of that side, but this is where you have drop passes. Can't really blame the quarterback on that. They were good balls to Kobe Hudson. Then you have, again, part of your offense, but John Rice gets them in a field goal range. They miss a field goal, missed extra point after a touchdown that John Rice leads. And then, of course, you have the drive at the end, right at the end of the half where it's a shovel pass. John Rice is following the play, and they just don't come up and convert it. Again, it's probably the kind of right call for John Rice to do there. But again, you can't blame him for that when the coaches make that play and he's running it. I mean, he's doing what he's supposed to do. So, no, I think John Rice definitely has shown improvement this season. At the end of last season, I was kind of checked out on him where I was like, I don't know if he's going to get better. I don't know if he's going to ever be the starting quarterback we think he can be. But no, even despite the injury, where I'm sure he's still not completely 100%, the arm looks better. I mean, he's a lot more accurate this season. He's got a stronger arm. And again, even at 80%, whatever he's at running wise, he's still putting up almost 100 rushing yards, so he's doing what he can do. I think this team just has a lot of issues up front. I mean, the offensive line has been something we've consistently talked about and complained about all season long. So that does him no favors when he doesn't get the proper pocket protection. And you saw it on that interception. So yeah, I think there's a lot of problems and they're only going to get worse. And that's where I'm kind of concerned heading into next year, where you might lose RJ Harvey, where you're obviously going to lose John Rice Plumlee. You're going to lose some of these wide receivers. And so it's going to get tougher for UCF. And I think they just kind of need to rebuild the offense a little bit and, let Hinshaw do what he can do. And see what you can evaluate. But right now, this season, yeah, there's a lot to be desired with the level of talent on the offensive side of the ball. And I really think even this goes back to last year, we've completely thought that this offense would be a lot better than it is. And, they've been good, here and there, but there's still a lot of glaring issues that aren't even John Rice's fault. It's more than him. he just a lot of the time happens to be the fall guy because, it's a lot easier to blame the quarterback and talk about bringing in a quarterback than completely overhauling your offense and your offensive line.
Yeah, I'll say I have heard from a couple people that I do think RJ Harvey's going to come back, which would be big. And
Absolutely.
I do think Hudson and Baker are coming back potentially, because even Javon Baker's been like teasing it on Twitter. Now, who knows if that's true or not, but that would be big, especially when you're not getting your quarterback back. So to have your skill position players come back would be huge. But no, you're right. And what's even crazier is we've talked about it all year, but UCF's 8th in the country in total offense. So that's the frustrating thing, Rob. It's like Texas is the closest at 14, and then you have TCU at 16. But to be 8th in the country in offense, I don't even want to know what rushing offense. I'm assuming rushing offense is, if I could find it quick enough, I'm assuming rushing offense is just as good, if not better. We're 3rd in the country in rushing offense, only behind Liberty and Air Force. We are 3rd in the country, and we're 5-6. If that doesn't prove to you the glaring weakness of this team is just them beating themselves, I don't know what else there is. UCF beats themselves. That's all that is. Now, credit Texas Tech. I think, honestly, the 2 best teams, I'll say 3 best. See, now I'm getting in weird territory because I'm like, oh, well, Kansas. I think Texas Tech played pretty good defense on UCF today. I was pretty impressed with them defensively. I think besides that, the only other teams where I'm like, wow, they're playing decent, solid defense is Kansas, obviously. And maybe it's a toss-up between Kansas State and West Virginia. But there's been no team that's been able to stop UCF. There's only been teams that we hurt ourselves and we beat ourselves. That's what's the frustrating thing about these games. That's what's frustrating every time having to come on here and saying UCF beat themselves. Yep, it came down to XYZ, because at the end of the day, UCF could have won this game very easily, handily, but they kept the other team in it. So I think, listen, you have to win next week to have a bowl game. It's a must win, but all of these games have been must wins. But this is a ultra must win because your season could be over next Saturday. But going into next year, it's trying to figure out, how do we make sure in these 1-score games, which in the Big 12 seems like it's a 1-score game every single weekend, how do we go out and get a dub next season? Because this season, it's been awful. I think, just if off the top of my head, let's think you lost by 2 to Oklahoma. You lost by 1 to Texas Tech. You lost by 1 to Baylor. So that's 3 right there where you lose by a field goal. And probably in all those games, it's probably a missed kick or something. So I don't know. I'm done talking about this game. Rob, final thoughts as we go on to our Thanksgiving week. We get a good Thanksgiving week. We still have an episode. And it's our final, hopefully not final game, but kind of give your final thoughts on this game out in Lubbock, Texas.
Yeah, tough one to watch just because, again, so many things went wrong. It's disappointing too when it's a 1-point loss. That's something that, again, you look back and you say, oh, well, this is where the difference was. This is where the difference was. And that's where you kick yourself because you can see where the issues are, but the team didn't address that during the game. So they caused it themselves. So it's even more frustrating to watch because you know what's happening and you know what's going wrong and you know what could have been fixed to come out with a W in this one, but it didn't happen. So hopefully coming out of this, they leave that bad energy in Lubbock, they come back to UCF, come back at home, final home game of the season, play in Houston. Houston's beatable. Houston, has not been great this season. So again, it's a former AAC team. There's history between these two. Dana Holgerson's made it personal by questioning the space program at UCF and the space game. So now it's personal. Listen, go out, score a bunch of points on Houston, go beat them, go get a bowl game. Don't care where the bowl's at. Don't care who it's against. Just go bowling. That's it. That's what we're looking forward to. Bookmark it. Just put it in this whole season behind you. Go get 6 wins. Go get a bowl game, and let's ride off into the sunset into next season.
Yeah, they're not playing for a bowl game because they're 4-7 now. So I don't know if that's a positive or negative. I don't know if their players are going to show up or, I don't know. But not a good spot. You don't want to be 5-6 with your last game kind of determining if you're going to a bowl game or not. Not fun at all. But hey, credit to Nick Geddes. He called it. He said you're going to be 5-6 going into the final week. I hate that he's right because when he's right, it sickens me. But he called it in the preseason. You're going to be 5-6 heading into the Houston game. And if Nick Geddes is right, he said that UCF would get to 6-6 and you'd go bowling. So we'll talk about Houston, and they only lost by, I think, 13 to Oklahoma State today. They put up 30 on Oklahoma State. So we'll get into all things Houston next week. We're going to take Thursday off, Thanksgiving, so I'm not going to make you see my ugly mug on your holiday. So we'll be releasing an episode next week on Black Friday. Friday, we'll be releasing at 8 a.m. sharp for our Houston preview. And then obviously with the game for Houston on Saturday, we'll be doing our post-game show. Maybe, because I might be going to the game. We'll see. But we'll try to do a post-game show. And then obviously, hopefully we're going bowling so we can bring more episodes regarding the team and football and playing. But if not, we go right into the off season, and we will, of course, bring you content throughout the off season, which will be a long 9-month stretch. I hate the off season so much. It makes so much easier when we have content like football games to talk about. All right, we'll get through it, guys. Let's go get another win next week. Another win. Let's go get a win. We're on a losing streak now. Let's go get a win next week to go bowling and to be 6-6 in your first season in the Big 12. All right, guys, this has been Charge On, presented by BetOnline. Happy Thanksgiving, and we will see you next Friday.